So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the fifth of our 8-part series of workshops. Today's webinar is about getting to know your Small Business Development Center. For this webinar, I'll be the host today. I'm Patrick Nearing, the Community Development Educator and Professor for UW-Madison Extension in Brown and Kewaunee counties. And joining me is my colleague across the campus, David Stauffacher, and he will be joining us from the Small Business Development Center office that's located here. He covers the northeast Wisconsin part of, or the northeast part of Wisconsin, and works with the Small Business Development Center. They provide a lot of resources to us in the area. And David is a senior business advisor with the Small Business Development Center. He's in the Coffran School of Business, which is here on the UW Green Bay campus. His services are for clients in the Northeast Wisconsin region, and he's a longstanding professional career in diverse leadership positions in banking, finance, marketing, and manufacturing operations. David is a Wisconsin native and a supportive connection to our state's educational system with degrees at UW-Whitewater and UW-Oshkosh. David has a known passion to assist small business clients throughout their journey towards success. And outside of his professional life, he enjoys Wisconsin outdoors and his love of fishing and the finest waterways of our state. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Patrick. Appreciate it. I got to be honest and full disclosure. He did say that I was actually in the building next door, and I'm going to have to be honest with you. I'm actually in my office in my basement, so the background's a little bit different. It's a little bit nicer than my office, so I'll be honest with you on that. So anyways, thank you again, Patrick, and welcome all to our 2023 feed webinar series. And a special thanks to the collaborative partnerships that we have with UW Extension for offering a webinar of this sort, to just kind of highlighting the fantastic resources that we have in this state. For many of you food-related companies, and some of you that may be ag-related companies. So we do a lot of that as well. The objective of my session today primarily is just to give you a brief overview of the resources and how we contribute and participate in the Wisconsin ecosystem, that we help those that are looking to start a business, or those that have been in the early stage, right? They've got started. We help you as well. So I appreciate it. And after I'm done, I'm going to be introducing Ben Cadman of Voyageurs Sourdough. I've had the opportunity to work with him and part of his journey at the earlier stages as one of his resources, one of many. So I will be having him talk as well. Next slide. Let's go. Here we go. So the Wisconsin Business Development Center. We're going to talk a little bit about where we are, as who we are as an organization of America's SBDC. Kind of give you the brief overview. Who are we? And I think for some of us, the America's Small Business Development Center really has some close roots to Wisconsin. For some of you, maybe it's a history nugget that you have. If you're a little bit my age, or if you're younger, maybe it's just a reflection of a conversation you may have had. But our roots go back in our state, our Wisconsin state, a U.S. Senator Gaylord Nelson. Gaylord, back in the late 1970s, was spearheading the legislation in our federal government that talked about Small Business Development Act of 1990. Basic premise was to help small businesses, much like yourselves, and contribute back to the capital system that we have. We knew that economic development was very important. And I think 40 years later, and the network that we have of over 1,000 centers across the whole country, some in every state, and that we're here to collaborate with the SBA, Small Business Administration. I often tell them that that's our parent. We're connected to universities in many of the states we have, and we are here at the University of Wisconsin, as well as state government and local officials. Our impact throughout the country and Wisconsin, I'll show you in a minute, is basically new jobs, new businesses, as well as capital investment. Next page. As far as Wisconsin, we bring it down from a national to a local perspective. The SBDC we're part of the network. We're part of 14 centers throughout the state of Wisconsin. You see the map there. Most of us are connected to the universities, as I said before. We do have some outreach centers in Waukesha, Rock County, in the southwest part of the state. Next slide. As I said before, we're part of the University of Wisconsin system. That is one of our funding sources. So we're a no-fee consulting organization. So we get our funding primarily through the Small Business Administration. So they do help with some of the funding. And we're also funded in part through the University of Wisconsin system. So we have access to a wealth of resources that help us in our collaborative network. Next slide. So we help businesses at any stage. It could be to define or determine if you have a feasible idea in your business. We then maybe help you launch your business. We help businesses grow their existing business to a different level. Sometimes we even help with those as they expand throughout their journey to help get financing as well. Next slide. As far as what we actually help with, as I said before, we're no fee consulting. We're free. So it's not a model that I would probably recommend that any of you on this call charge, as you're in the business to make some money. But we provide not only the consulting, but we also provide some educational resources, classes at times. We help businesses from business planning, startup guidance. They have an idea. We've helped those that need some financial management. They're trying to get their numbers straight. They're trying to figure out where am I going? I'm open and I don't know what to do. We'll help them with marketing and sales growth, give them some guidance, maybe help them with a little bit of market research to help them decide what they want to do. Finance and capital access. Now, we are not a lending organization, so we don't have access to funds of which we're going to lend out to, but sometimes we will help you with kind of coordinating those financial pieces of information and having a conversation with your banker or investor to get comfortable with that. Lastly, we'll help you with some management and strategic guidance, kind of help you deal with the plan of where you're going and what you need to do. Next slide. So, why is this important? Why do we do what we do? Why do we take the commitment so seriously? Well, the statistics out here mentioned Wisconsin alone that we have over 1 million workers that are employed by small business. Now that workforce, basically, that's almost 99% of the businesses that are involved in the state. One statistic that's not on there, and this is more nationwide, I think I find it interesting that of all the small businesses, now the Small Business Administration kind of defines that as any business that has less than 500 employees. If you take that down to 20 employees, almost 90% of the businesses in this country have 20 employees or less. So I find that interesting and quite overwhelming when you start to think about we are Main Street. It's not all the big companies that we sometimes grow accustomed to in the news. We deal with small Main Street companies. Next slide. So we started national, we went down to Wisconsin. Now let's come down to Green Bay, the Small Business Development Center at Green Bay. We are part of that 14 center network here in the state. Our center is located on the campus at UW Green Bay. Quite honestly, we just basically moved there a couple of years ago before COVID. We used to be over at the NWTC, the Technical College, and part of their Business Resource Center. We're all employees. I'm an employee of the UW Green Bay system and part of the Coffrin School of Business. So we've got a great center there and we're focusing on business. I myself and the UW Center here basically focuses on 12 counties. If you think about the thumb of it and got to figure out where this goes, all the way up to Door County, all the way up to Florence County and Marinette. We provide resources to those counties. Next slide. It's kind of just an overview of the 14. That's just of the ones that I represent. The other schools, the other centers out the state will also reach there as well. So we mentioned it before, next slide. We provide services of no fee consulting, kind of an advisory capacity. Now, by all means, we're not experts in what your business may be. Some of us have been around the block for a while in a variety of capacities, but we're there to listen. Quite honestly, you have most of the answers. You just need some guidance and we hope to facilitate that. We also offer an entrepreneurial training program, kind of an 8-week class for those that want to maybe understand their business a little bit, maybe write a business plan, know a little bit, to feel confident in what they do. Those classes are held throughout the year, not only in person, but also virtually. Lastly, we provide customized resources. So we've done some corporate professional training for those companies that maybe are looking for some training, some skill set refinement. We will help devise customized programs for them as well. Next slide. So we talked about our presence as far as nationally. We talked about it as state. What do we do? Impact. As you can see, our state last year, based in 22, was involved in 300 business starts. We in Green Bay had 30 of those. Capital investment, the kind of the biggest metric that we often focus on is over $132 million in capital investment was involved in the small businesses that we dealt with. We in Green Bay were helped support even over 16 million of that. So in essence, we believe our impact is vital for not only for our economy, but also for our small businesses, and that we help them to be successful. Next slide. So the gist of things today. You want to start a business, or some of you may have just started a business, whether it's going to be a food truck, could be a Main Street operation at your local flea market. Maybe you've got that need and desire to do the next microbrew, or as Ben will share with you, got a great recipe for sourdough bread. So where does one start? Next slide. Quite honestly, we hope you would start with us. We think we provide kind of an open and understanding relationship to kind of help you and hold your hand throughout the journey. My adage with a lot of people will say, I'll tell you that there's nothing guaranteed in your business. I'll tell you that the water in that pond is going to be cold, but I can assure you that if you're willing to commit, I'll jump in that water with you and we'll get it done. Sometimes, next slide. Sometimes our conversations that we just sit down and try to put the anxiousness aside. We'll ask you some questions of basically, what do you want to do? And most importantly, why? Is it something, if you want to replace employment, maybe you want a life balance, or you want your own kind of control, ownership in a company. We'll talk a little bit about drive and commitment. Running your own business, like most of you on this call realize, it's not necessarily a 9-to-5 job. We'll also help you to kind of understand who's actually going to buy your product. Sometimes, as I will tell people, that we have our own internal bias, right? We think we've got that great recipe. We think we have the neatest product, or we think that service is really needed because it impacts my life. But we have to feel comfortable that others see it the same way. Finally, we talk about business plan. Do you have one? If not, I will probably recommend that you have one. Next slide. Our conversation, we try to address the challenges. I don't put up here, the common failures in small business, because I don't necessarily deal in failure. I always tell my kids that I believe the word fail is more or less an acronym for falling ahead in learning. But we do talk about challenges. A lot of those challenges, they're numerous. A few on here is maybe I don't make enough money. Lacking expertise in what you do. You might be able to bake the greatest bread, but to run a team of people that would do that, maybe I lack that. Sometimes we talk about capital investment. What do I need to start my business? My gosh, it talks a lot. Cash flow. Maybe my customers, their buying habits are different. So we address the challenges. Next slide. So as I said before, I talk about business plans. Why? And you can find statistics all over the internet. Forbes, LinkedIn. Statistic that's often out there that 80% of businesses don't make it during the first 18 months. Now, we're proud to say that of those that you may have dealt with, either the SBDC, the SBA, we feel that those that are there and involved with those type of resources, 2/3 make the journey beyond 5 years. Next slide. Talking about business planning, this was a resource of ours. It's Lean Business Planning by Tim Berry. It's just not to get all complicated in the chart, but it talks about those people that actually do some type of a plan have proven to be a little more successful than those that do not. Now, that's not guaranteed, basically, whether you do win or not, but statistics do lead us to believe that if you do some type, you'll have better chance for success. Next slide. So I often use this slide as well with people to say plan versus planning. Now, I will tell most people that I focus on the planning portion. The plan to me is more just the document, the meeting of which you can communicate something. Planning can start on a napkin if you wanted to, or you can write a 20, 30, 40 page dissertation if you'd like to. I think sometimes it can be overwhelming and kind of a waste of times, but I'd like to focus on the planning of it. Next slide. So what do we talk about planning? It's a process. It's a process. Starts out with an ideation stage. You got a great idea or some passion inside that you want to do. What we then try to do is get that idea and frame it up a little bit. Get it out of your head, kind of mark it down. What do I want to do? I know what I want to do, but can I actually tell it to someone else? So we start to schematically put it down. Then we get into the market research. All right, what is the market like? We said before, there's always been bias, right? We think the idea is best, but what about someone else? So we talk about market research. Then it gets into, I got to talk to people. I'm going to talk to bankers, resources. I'm going to talk to maybe potential clients and share my idea. Do they like it? Or maybe not so much. Then we put all our research and our intelligence, and then we kind of gather it up into some type of document. Maybe we talk with partners, bankers, or maybe my spouse to see if it makes sense. Next stage, next line. So planning, as I mentioned before, there's probably 4 pillars from my perspective. It starts out with a problem, some type of an opportunity that we see exists today in the marketplace. Then we have to do the market analysis. What is going on in the world that we're dealing with? Talk a little bit about operational capacities. Okay, I've got this idea. The market says it's right. What do I need to make it happen? Then we have to talk about finances, probably the most scariest of all. Next slide. The tool that I use sometimes in our classes, as well as many of my clients, is I use this type of schematic. It's called the Business Model Canvas. It's been around for, my God, it's been around over a decade now. It's originated by Alex Osterwalder as part of his thesis, but I use it as a great tool today because it talks about 9 building blocks of any business. You can be a coffee shop, food wagon, you could be a manufacturer, a one-person consultant. You look at these are fundamentals of any type of business. And I think it's important to, when you try to frame out what your business needs, what we need to do, I think it's an excellent tool. Because businesses, in essence, they create value, they create something, but they have to deliver it to someone, customer, and they got to get paid. They got to capture something in return. It's the simplest view on that. Next page. So pillar number 1, the problem. My definition, businesses exist to solve problems. Now it's broadly defined. It could be opportunities that exist, but that's why we exist today as entrepreneurs. My car's out of gas, I have a problem. I go to a convenience store. I'm hungry, I may have a problem. Now I could cook it myself, I can go to a restaurant. If I have a question on how to start a business, I may need a consultant. So problems exist. Businesses are there to eventually solve them. Next page. So back to our tool that we talked about, problems and opportunities. We got to know what these problems are, or at least define them eventually. And they'll eventually lead to a marketplace, a customer. We as a value proposition, we the business, we're the solution provider. And we got to get those worlds together. finding the problem, whoever has it, and tell them that we've got the solution. Next page. So oftentimes the problems, the solutions that we deal with, the solution is usually something new, right? We've created something that's never existed today. Now, quite honestly, I think that's difficult to do in today's world, but it's something new. Maybe it's something better. The way it's being done just isn't convenient. It's costly. We can do it better. Maybe in some very new markets, the demand is so significant, there's just not enough providers out there, and I think I can add to that capacity. Sometimes the delivery systems, I can actually be more efficient so my customers can engage with me versus not. That was interesting during COVID for some of the restaurants. Many of the restaurants decided to do more takeout. They started to do more drive-ups. They were forced to do that. Totally different delivery system. Lastly, might be integration systems. You make it, you deliver it, you sell it. You basically, it's a direct to consumer. We don't need a middle person. Next slide. So pillar number 2, market assessment. I said before, we have this great idea. We think there's a need. Now we really need to understand, is there really a market for it? Oftentimes, this is a discussion we spend the most time on. Getting to the reality to say, is there a market there that exists that is sustainable enough that I can actually make some money at this? Next slide. Now, market assessment for some, we talk about industry trends. If you're a big player, if you're a small business, maybe you're that food truck. Maybe you're that local connoisseur that you want to do some stuff. Maybe your industry is basically the marketplace that you deal with. We often reference Door County, and some businesses might be here, that your industry of tourism, quite honestly, is Door County. Things happen in Door County slightly different than maybe over in the middle part of the state, out east, out west. We talk about target segmentation, competitive analysis, and positioning. Next slide. Once again, we talk about this section real specifically. Who's your customer? Who is not your customer? Can't be everything to everybody. It just doesn't work. There's not enough there's not enough resources for you to be able to do that. So trying to define that is important in your business plan process. Next slide. Now, times, we do teach it. We talked about our entrepreneurial training class, and a lovely Rhonda Abrams has been around for a long time, and we use her books quite extensively in our classes. And defining the who, I won't necessarily get into the specifics behind it, but the markets that you deal with, we want them to be specific. I use the adage, if I'm with someone in my office, I will look at the 10 chairs at the board table that I'm sitting at. If I can invite 10 people to that boardroom, who would they be? That's where I want you to be defining who your customers are. Next slide. So sometimes when we're talking about market, we need to be realistic. We talked about those 10 people. Who is the profile and who can you serve? Just Green Bay, just Brown County, all of Wisconsin. Maybe it's Southeast Wisconsin. Maybe it's Milwaukee. Realizing what your capacity as a business, how can you serve them, helps you define of who you want to talk to, how you're going to market to them. That's part of planning. You have to know where you're going to go. Next slide. Competition. The reality is you're not the only one on the playground. There is going to be someone else out there that's going to try to solve your problem, the problem at hand. Now, it's not saying that they're good, they're bad, they exist. And you need to know who they are. It's like driving in the car, right? We look at that rear view mirror. We know someone's back there. We need to focus on ahead. So it's interesting when you're looking at competitors, the conversation of, and I use this as a reference point, it's a cup of coffee. If I really wanted a cup of coffee, I could go to Starbucks and pay $3, $4, whatever it may be. I can go cheap. I can go to McDonald's. Or I can go to my favorite place, Quick Trip, because I like the coffee. All provide coffee. But someone is different versus the other. You want to be different. So analyzing the next page. Analyzing the customer, or excuse me, the competition allows you to understand not only the marketplace that you're working within, maybe how they serve your customers, maybe in certain ways that you did not realize that you took for granted. In essence, you may find an opportunity to have a competitive advantage. So why is a competitive advantage important? Next slide. Oversimplification. Would you want to be the Macintosh or the Granny Smiths? Being different is important in anything that you do, even if it's a one-person consultant. What do you specialize in? If you're a food truck, what's your cuisine and why are you different than the food truck next to you? So any business that you do, whether you're a distributor, whether you're a restaurant, there needs to be something different about what you do. And it may not necessarily be the product. Getting to the edges and realizing that the product itself is the tangible item that we exchange for money. We want to be the outside stuff and difference. Next slide, we're going to skip that one a little bit. We're going to move there. Go to the, okay, operations. Pillar number 3. We talked about the operations. The reality is, you can go to the next slide, is how do I make this happen? Right, I got an idea, the market's there. How do I make this work? What do I need to know? I need to understand, I need to have vendors. I have to have a place sometimes, whether a roof over my head. I need to have suppliers. I need an infrastructure, a building. We have to know all this type of stuff for what you want to do. Next slide. Operational resources, we talked about facilities, equipment, people. In today's day, it's tough to find the right people. Sometimes there's just not enough people to help you provide what you do. You need to think about that while you're starting a business. Next slide. And then number 4, finances. Oh my goodness. As let's see, Jerry Maguire, the movie Jerry Maguire, I think it was in the 90s, so I'm dating myself. Show me the money. You need money, you need capital to make your business, not only to buy the stuff to start, but you also need it to grow the business as you expand. Next slide. So to me, financial plan is probably the most important part. I think it's the pinnacle that we all focus on, because I got to go to the bank. I have to talk to someone. I need to borrow some money because I got to buy that equipment. Well, that's true. But it's not just the immediacy of the buying the equipment and opening the doors. I need working capital to extend beyond that. How do I grow that business? If people really, really, really want my product, how do I grow it? How do I get the inventory to be able to do that? Quite honestly, we learned this probably 2-3 years ago. It's when COVID hit, the world stopped. Many of us were going to run out of money and we didn't know what to do for the next 30 days. Thankfully, we got PPP loans and EIDL loans and help us to get through that. But you see how important the finances were. Next slide. Part of the financial plan is really, and I will kind of hold people's hand through this, is understand what's the difference between sales and profit. We know that we have to make money. If we don't make money, we're not going to be around very long. And with all the costs that's associated with a business, from the cost of our materials to our overhead of a building, labor, how do we make money? We will work with you that. Next slide. Now, part of the business plan, I won't dwell on this, is sales forecasting. Is okay, we don't know how many people are going to buy our product. We think we do. So sometimes you have to get comfortable with the unknowns. Next slide. Managing cash. It's all about cash. Yes, we can generate sales. Yes, we may be able to generate a profit. But do we actually have cash in the till or cash in the bank for those uneasy situations? So we got the 4 pillars. Next slide. So we've got all this research and planning. Now we got to put it all together. So this is part of the document. As we said, we've already moved beyond the planning part of it, but the document. Who are we writing it for? And this is kind of where I dwell a little bit about the document itself. To me, isn't the important part. It could be to you. It could be to a banker, which would want more stuff. It could be an investor that would want even more detailed stuff. Next slide. So all throughout the planning, as you put it all together, the key things that you need to think about. What do you do? Who do you do it for? Who's your customer? What is their problem? Or what problem opportunity exists in the marketplace? What solution are you providing? Is it a cup of coffee, or is it a community? Is it a place to go? Someone to talk to? What is unique about your business? Remember, we talked about the Macintosh for the Granite Smith. You have to be different. There is a difference between all of us as a business. Capabilities, how are you going to get it done? You promised a customer that you're going to do some things. You're going to solve their problem. Quite honestly, they don't care how you do it. You sold them, they're willing to do that. You need to know how to do that. Lastly is show me how you're going to make money. Where's the cash in? Next slide. We've used this one probably, again, get to the end at most, is Benjamin Franklin's quote of, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. Planning, doing something, I think helps you move through that process. Think of things and don't be afraid if you don't know the answers. That's okay. We're not supposed to have all the answers. We may find it though as we go forward. So as I started out, and I went through this fairly quick, you want to start a business. Where do I start? A couple of action steps. Next slide. Get a support team. Talk to someone like myself, an attorney, banker, mentor. SCORE is another wonderful organization. Surround yourself with people that you can talk to. Being an entrepreneur can be a lonely proposition at times. Do some business planning. You need to think this thing out. There's a lot of variables, some that we just don't have the answers for, but we can find out through research and talking to people. In essence, we got to mitigate risk. Everything that we do, we need to minimize the potential risk where we can maybe lose some money, go out of business. We just need to understand what we're getting ourselves into. And then begin with a financial plan. Kind of understand how much this thing's going to cost me. Not only today, but tomorrow, a year from now. What am I going to need? Next slide. So we talked about startup resources. Yes, the SBDC, we're here to help you. We've got, if you go to the SBDC Wisconsin, there are two wonderful web pages on there. It talks about the resources that we have. We have our First Step to Business video series. And we also have the how-to videos when you're understanding the legalities of running a business, the numbers, or even how to talk to your banker. It's worth a check. I mentioned SCORE. I'm actually a SCORE counselor as well. In the bigger picture of things, the SBA is our parent. SBDC and SCORE were kind of siblings. One's volunteer and one's more paid. Wonderful organization. They have a wonderful library for resources that you can actually get a further depth of running and knowing how to run a business. How do I gain my sales? How do I do a budget? It's a plethora of information. Some of the resources in the state of Wisconsin even include legal resources. Marquette University and the University of Wisconsin-Madison has entrepreneurial law clinics. These students are at some stage of their college education, and they have an opportunity to learn real world case studies and help you with that. There's oversight, directors are involved, so the quality that they put out in what they do is top notch. And these are done by college students that are trying to go down that career path. Check them out. And the price is right. It doesn't cost anything. There's local economic development offices in every county. There's an economic development office that focuses on economic development. Check them out. They have got wonderful resources that probably are relevant to the counties that you deal with. Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, WEDC, you will also see, and you can join on their mail list. They're kind of the mothership for economic development here in Wisconsin, and wealthy of information, especially with grant information as far as what's going on. Talked a little bit about our county. County municipals, community municipals, if you live in a village or town, they also have some resources that might help you. If you're learning about licenses, what do I need to go in this community? They can help you. And lastly, research, your library, college library. It's a plethora of information. As well as we do, we have access to subscriptions that can help you out with some market research as well. Next slide. Lastly, a few things that I want to reminisce a little bit about is other colleagues in the state of Wisconsin, my colleagues that I work with. We have a Food Finance Institute. Some of you may be aware of that. That's done out of Madison that work with food-focused entrepreneurs. They have boot camps, learning about how to grow your business, whether there's a finance boot camp, they will help scenario plan with you. In some cases, they have connections to help you raise some equity. But Tara Johnson had started that many years ago, and it's taken off very well because of the food infrastructure we have in the state. Next slide. And the one thing you may want to do just for some occasionally reading or listening, the Edible Alpha podcast talks about food entrepreneurs, not only in Wisconsin, but all throughout the country that have joined this. Try it for a little download, listen to some tidbits of information, some stories of other businesses that are going through some of the same issues that maybe you go through. It's a wonderful thing. Next slide. My colleagues over in the western part of the state in Eau Claire have what we call the Capital Access Clinic. I'm actually a participant on there. I actually am a supervisor in some of the situations where we work on doing projections for many of our small businesses that need to go to a bank. We will help them with your projections, try to make the numbers work out for you so that you can talk confidently to your banker. Next slide. Lastly, down the road in Oshkosh, this is our digital marketing clinic. Once again, this is run by interns. I should say the Capital Access Clinic is also run by interns, helping students. But we've worked with clients, help them evaluate their website, help them develop a marketing plan, a social media plan of how they can grow their business. It's worth a check out. Once again, if you have an online business or if you have a website, which I probably recommend that you do nowadays, check them out. They might be able to help you and give you a third-party perspective about what goes on and what they view on your website. Next slide. Actually, we're going to skip a couple. And then there's us. As I said before, we're here and we welcome all opportunities to help you doing some business consulting or advisors, a capacity to work with you. We can help in business planning. We can help you with some market research. We also have some classes that can help you as well. So with that, I ran a little bit long. Sorry, I tried to move that pretty quick. I thank you. And now we're going to go introduce one of the clients that I had the privilege of working with, Ben Cadman, and his lovely wife, Celeste, who is not here today. It's too bad for all of us. But he will talk a little bit about his business of Voyager Sourdough, from its journey from the kitchen to the church, to downtown Green Bay, and also to Appleton. So thank you very much for our presentation. Patrick?
Thanks, David. And I'm just going to turn it right over to Ben. Ben is the founder and co-owner of Voyageurs Bakehouse, and he has worked with the Small Business Development Center and some of his business planning. And I'll let him talk about his business there here in Green Bay on Broadway.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me today and sharing my story and journey so far. Thank you, David, for the introduction and inviting me to speak today. So Patrick, you can go ahead and click the slide. Yep, it's the journey of building a bakehouse. So basically, in short, I started a bakery business about 4 years ago now. And this is the journey of that humble beginnings to what it is today, our physical location, which we call Voyageurs Bakehouse. Next slide, please. So I think a real simple way to figure out if you want to start a business and have the get-go to pursue it and persevere it is a quote which comes from an entrepreneurial speaker and author. His name is Jim Rohn, and he quotes, "The bigger the why, the easier the how." And David did touch on this briefly in his presentation too, is what is your why? Why are we doing this? Why do we start a business? What is the core reason for doing that? And if it really digs deep inside you, then the easier it just becomes easier to be able to execute it. And mine has changed a little bit along the way. I think when I first met David, I just really wanted to have my own business, and it was quite simplistic. And as I dug deeper into it, the core reason for my why was I really wanted to bring this healthy, delicious artisan bread to Northeast Wisconsin. And I wanted to support the local economy by ordering all of the things I needed to create that product, so that I could create this little ecosystem of a business. And that was really at the core of why we're doing what we're doing today, and it's still true. And that's made the how much easier, and we've had some early success. But as we know, small business, there's a long way to go. And so we are 4 years into our journey. Next slide. So this is, I call it the organic journey, because it's not straight and narrow. There's twists and turns. The beginning was very humble, and I'll explain that story a little bit now. Next slide. So yeah, it was the experiment. I had just moved to the US. My wife is from Green Bay. She brought me back here in about March or April 2018. And I was just a hobby baker, a home baker. I baked sourdough bread at the weekend at home as a way to relax after what was a stressful career prior to that. And I moved to the US, and I didn't have a job, so I had a little bit more time on my hands, and I just started baking a little bit more. And I realized when I moved here to Green Bay that there wasn't really an artisan bakery in town that was producing this style of bread that I had really enjoyed, and I had experienced in other places that I had lived. And so I started to give the bread out to family and friends, and everyone said, "This is great, you should sell it," and so on. And the very first, I guess, sparks of it, some of you may know this thing called 1 million cups, but basically most towns, I think, around Wisconsin might have them, but you have 6 minutes to pose your business, and you might have a question that you want to ask people that are listening to you. And that's how I first met David. And I brought a loaf of bread to that. And my question at that, I was looking for somewhere to bake. Up until then, I could make a few loaves at home, but I really couldn't make enough to sell to anybody. So I went to this 1 million cups, and for 6 minutes I presented my bread. And shortly after the end of the presentation, I bumped into David, and it went from there. And so the experiment for me was basically to make some bread and start selling it at farmers markets. And that was really the catalyst of seeing if there was the community shared the same desire to be able to buy and consume this product. And that's how it started. Next slide, please. So by this stage, I had found a shared kitchen to use to bake bread in, and it was right opposite my home, ironically, and it was a school church kitchen. And after the school had finished for the day using the kitchen, I could go in there and bake bread and use the ovens and things like that. I baked all of the bread inside cast iron pots and used very minimal equipment. I mixed everything by hands, and it was just a way to try and bake a few days a week and sell bread at farmers markets. Once we kind of saw that the interest and the demand for the product was there. I mean, I could make like a handful of loaves, 20, 30 loaves. They would sell out very quickly at a market. I was like, okay, how do we scale this, and how do we get this product into people's homes? We were nowhere near ready to take the plunge of opening a bakery. Again, I didn't come back from a background of running a food business at all. So I had no idea whatsoever at this stage what I was getting into and what would happen later, but also really how to go about it. David, I must say, at that stage too, this is when I started to have a regular meetup with David about business planning, forecasting for a business plan, because I knew at some point we were going to need to raise some funding from somewhere, and that's where his service really came into play. And yeah, so the experiment that we came up with was like, okay, how do we make it so easy for people to buy a loaf of bread and with the littlest effort on their behalf. So I came from a background, I knew how to build a website, and so I had my skills in there. So I launched a very simple website with a backend that allowed us to take orders and organize deliveries to people's homes. And that's what we started with. We basically delivered bread for free to people in Green Bay. So they would order on the website, and I would bake it all, pack it all, throw it in the car, and drive around Green Bay. And that's really how the next stage of the business began. Next slide, please. Yeah, so it started to gain traction in October 2018 to April 2019, and this is where I started to diversify our products. So up until then, I made a simple sourdough loaf of bread, and this is where we started to launch other breads, all sourdough based, but just different combinations of flavors. So for example, cinnamon maple raisin bread. People in the northeast Wisconsin like a sweeter product. So this is kind of the direction that we went with at the time. And it's still a bread that we sell every day in our bakeries. And this really helped to get existing customers to come back and have repeat purchases because they knew our product was great. And every time we launched something new, we would have a high percent that would come back again to purchase it. So this really started to build our repeat customers, which obviously is very important for having a sustained business. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I remember the first time that the media came to film us live. It was, can't remember the name of the program now, but you're on 5 Live, I think they come and film you early in the morning, and media at this point in time, it just blew up. I remember I had my phone of my Shopify transactions, and I was on the TV maybe for 1 hour, and obviously the audience they have is very large, and it was our target audience too, which generally a little bit older, a little bit more expendable cash into healthy foods and things like that. So as soon as the show ended, I've never had so many notifications of transactions on my phone before, and this was really got our word out. So in those early days, any kind of media, it was just great for the business, whether it's newspaper or being on TV. Next, please. So the Bakehouse project, so it got to the point where I guess the school were kind of like, hey, you're turning our kitchen into a bakery. And I knew to make it viable, I got to the point, it was about 18 months in now, and I was making a little bit of cash, but it was never going to sustain my family and I had a first small child at the time. So my wife kind of turned around and said, well, you either do it and we build the bakery or go back to your career. So it was one of those tough pivotal points when, well, we've come this far, so let's figure it out. So those conversations with David again at that time of, how can we get the funds to start and build a physical location? And David helped me build the business plan, which then I took to the city of Green Bay, and they have something called the Revolving Loan Fund that's run by the Economic Development Department there. And they were, I think they loan up to 50% of your project needs, and then you need to bring on in our case, it was a small bank that was willing to give us some money, and then we need to raise a little bit of our own money. So that's where we got creative again to how to do that, because I didn't have deep pockets to stump up the cash. So next slide will explain that. And some of you might be familiar with this, Kickstarter. There's a few different brands out there, but Kickstarter is the best for kind of more business business forward projects. So Kickstarter, basically, if you don't know it, is like kind of GoFundMe, but for businesses. You put up your idea and you saying, hey, we want to try and raise this amount of money in this number of days. And with Kickstarter, if you hit your goal, you keep it. If you don't, you don't keep it. So there is an element of pressure behind it, which helps on both ends, those that are donating and for your side to try and creatively push and try and raise the money. So we were trying to do $25,000 in 25 days. And our reason for raising the money was to, like, we need this money to buy the oven. And that's kind of how the marketing angle of the money raising was placed, was like, we need to buy this oven so that we can build the bakehouse, and then you'll be able to buy bread forever here in Green Bay. And if not, then that's it. This bread's going to disappear. And so over the 25 days, people that donate on Kickstarter, you got to give them something in return. So we had a whole host of different gifts that people got depending on how much they donated. And it's a great way for, family and friends as well to be able to contribute. So there you go, off it went, and we managed to do it. I think in the end it was $30,000 that we raised on Kickstarter. So that was great. Next slide, please. And that was it. And then it was all about trying to figure out, location and all of the rest of it, which you can, which takes time, and choosing the right equipment, and then finalizing the funding, and off we went. We actually opened on March 6th, 2020. And then I think 6 days later, we had to close. It was the stay-at-home order. So it was quite the timing. But in the end, actually, April 2020 is still one of our best months ever in the business, which was kind of the main stay-at-home month in Wisconsin. But luckily, because we had been doing home delivery, we kept that going. And instead of doing 1 day a week, as we were previously, we just did 5 days a week delivering. And people supported small businesses. They knew our predicament of opening and then closing, and we were very well supported. We did curbside and all of the rest of it that many other businesses did, and it allowed us, because we had no idea how to run a physical retail location and a larger bakery. It allowed a period of calm to figure out some processes and operational things that otherwise, if we would have just been open, like those first 6 days were crazy. I always wonder what it would have been like without that. So there's always a silver lining. Next page, please. So here we are, cinnamon rolls we launched, and this is when my wife and I, there was only really 4 of us at the time in the bakery, and we slowly started to expand into pastry and other breads and things like that. So the cinnamon roll became a product feature. It is still one of our best sellers. And next place, please. Here's a little bit what I touched on earlier about the pandemic. And leaning into home delivery and what are the main core levers of the business. So, there was farmers markets, which luckily during that time continued to go on. And we had our wholesale business, which at the beginning of the pandemic didn't do so well, but in Wisconsin, it came back pretty quickly. So we had wholesale, farmers markets, we had our retail shop, and we had our home delivery. Those 4 core ways of selling our product. And I think that's really important note for anyone starting a food business, whether they're having a retail spot or selling a physical product, is to have multiple sales channels, because at different times, whether it's seasonal, certain ones will do really well and others will not. So in the bakery world, holidays obviously are really big. This week's going to be one of the biggest weeks of the year, being Easter. But in the dead of winter, it's not super great. So same in the summer with peak farmers markets. We do about 5 farmers markets a week. We're churning out a lot. So having the different sales channels really helps your business to iron out that seasonality. Next page, please. And here you go. Now we started to hire people, and we had a lot of space for rapid product launches. We came from a background of digital marketing, my wife and I, so we really focused a lot on building our newsletter list, email list. And today it's amazing. We have about 6,500 subscribers to our newsletter letter, and we send a newsletter out every Monday, which generally talks about what we're making this week, and then people can pre-order it on our website. We no longer do home delivery. We stopped that. It didn't become profitable anymore later on in the business, but people still can place their order and pick it up at the bakehouse. So this is where we just really got a period of time where we were experimenting, launching products. This would really gain a lot of traction and a lot of foot traffic into the bakehouse and for online orders. So yeah, all sorts of things, from cakes to pretzels to pastries, different breads. Next slide, please. And then holiday times, obviously November and December 2020 or that 2 months of the year are the busiest for bakeries. And you know, this is a time when, for us, marketing through storytelling is really big. So we would, you know, launch like this picture is my mom's Christmas cake. She's made it since I was a kid and always had it. So the idea was like, and you can do this with all your marketing, is if you're going to put it out there, if there's a story to tell of why you are creating this product and you want to sell it, that story is so important to really take the sales to the next level. And so I really make sure, if you're doing newsletter marketing, to really make sure you include and craft a story behind your sales, because no one really likes it when if you just send a link, say, please buy this bread, you need it now. It doesn't work. Next slide, please. So at this time, you know, it was the crazy holiday hustle, and probably a realization in our business that we were trying to do too many things, too many products. And I think next slide, you can change it to the next one, was something that we came up at the beginning of the year. Celeste and I, as a husband and wife team in this, we sit down and do an offsite at the beginning of each year and plan for the year. And we realized that we coined this at the time, we needed to simplify to amplify. That, you know, we had a product suite daily that might be 30 different types of products or 40 types of products, and it just caused you know, too much stress, a lot of inventory needs, a lot of wastage, and we realized that we needed to go back to our core and simplify, and this would help our profit overall. It was a great thing to do. But how did we do this? So the next slide might say that. So we needed to invest in some equipment. So we knew we really wanted to go into laminated pastry. So in the bakery world, that means croissants and the dough that you use to make croissants and all of those other flaky pastries. And it's something that wasn't really available, a product in our area. And so we knew we really wanted to get rid of the cakes and the cookies and all of that type of stuff that you could buy at many bakeries, and focus back on the European tradition of laminated pastry. And it ties in really well with the classic old sourdough bread. But to scale it, we needed some equipment, which that's when we started to invest in things like a sheeter, which if you don't know, in the bakery world, it's basically an automatic rolling pin. Next slide, please. So scaling up, hiring up, and it was a challenging time still in early 2020. And this is the time we had a second baby on the way, and an opportunity came up, and it's our second bakehouse. So it's a retail cafe bakery, which is in Appleton, about 30 minutes south of Green Bay. And the owner of the building at the time was a big supporter of ours and would come to Green Bay to buy bread, and kept pestering us, saying, I have this building, you should, you know, come and have a look at it. And eventually we went down, and we realized on College Avenue in Appleton, we couldn't say no. So it was, you know, let's just do it. And, you know, in hindsight, was it the right time for us? I think we were a little bit naive of what it takes to open a second location, and the strains and the stresses it puts on your first business. And so, and in learnings in it, there's a lot to learn, and that's maybe a story for another time. But I think to nut it down, ensure that you are 100% profitable and truly profitable before you open your second location. I think that's probably the best way. We went through some stressful financial times, which we got through it in the end, but by trusting the process that we would make it. But Next slide, please. So yeah, what are the three, and this presentation was done a little while ago, I think, when Celeste presented maybe 6 months ago. So since then, obviously, the second location, we're 1 year in Appleton exactly, and it's we just did our 3rd birthday here in Green Bay. And this last 6 months of last year, we really focused on building our wholesale business. We launched in Festival Foods. We're now in 6 stores. And our goal really as a business as we grow is like really concentrating on our main levers again. So wholesale has become the realization in the last 6 months, the realization that that's our future, is really wholesaling our product. And our goal is to get to the point where we're not stressed about how many people come in our front door anymore, because we know we have the guarantee of our wholesale business, which is covering our costs, so to speak. And then, you know, it's just the icing on the cake for the people that come visit us each day, because it's hard to know who, you know, foot traffic. It's not like we're in a big city where you have 1,000 people walking past your door every day, which people in New York do. And those type of cities. Here in Green Bay, we need to create your own foot traffic, and that takes a lot of effort. So wholesale as a way for us to really scale our product, maximize the equipment that we've invested in, and maximize the team that we have and the hours that people put into, and energy they put into our business. So that is kind of the future growth for our business over the next year. We've just signed a deal with a distributor that's taking some of our core breads statewide. So if you have a coffee shop or a restaurant anywhere in Wisconsin, you can look at Elegant Foods. They're out of Madison, and they carry our sourdough bread now. So that's at an early stage, but it's really, really where we see growth in the future for us. So 3 drivers to our success. Next slide, please. So product is definitely a very important one. Quality of the product and ingredients. So I didn't really touch on the ingredients, but I'll go back to that briefly. We try and order everything Northeast Wisconsin or a little bit further afield in Wisconsin for our core products. So that's butter, eggs, milk, and flour in baking. Sugar's impossible. Of course, that comes from outside of the US. But flour, there's some great artisan growers and millers in Wisconsin, which we were able to provide business to by getting stone ground healthy grains and rye and ancient grains from. We buy our butter locally from a small creamery in Two Rivers. Our eggs come from Door County at Waseda Farm. So building these relationships with our vendors was extremely important, and then the storytelling to our customers that your dollars spent with us are going further for all of these local businesses too, because, you know, eggs, milk, and all of it comes from local business too. And that's really, and it shines through the product too, the final product, because we're using really good, fresh, local ingredients. Customer service is, you know, from an early time, we hired a part-time person to look after everything to do with customer service online. And then in our stores, you know, we make sure that we hire in a way, and that Celeste and I are there as often as possible talking to customers, because that's what people want when they come into a retail shop. They want to be recognized. They want that minute of connection and chat. And that's what you need to give people when they come visit your business, and that helps your return customer as well. And standard of excellence. So when we hire, it's all about training and instilling the reasons of why we're doing what we're doing as a business, and the importance of the quality and maintaining a standard. If you've been to our bakehouse before, I know David has, it's open concept. So there was the idea of building it is that anyone that comes in, they can sit and have a coffee, and literally it feels like you're part of what's going on in the bakery. You can watch all of the bakers at work, and nothing is hidden. And so this really helps our standard of excellence. Company values, really important within, you know, the business is nothing without the team that you create. And, you know, turnover is a reality in the food business. In general, we have, you know, younger people that might come into your business for a short space of time because they're out and they go on to the next thing. And it's really about we never really hired based on experience. We hired based on how would this person fit in with the current culture that we're trying to build, and because we can train and teach them, and making sure that that personality is going to work really well in the culture that we've built. And I've had people. The first 2 employees I ever had are still with us. For bakers, I have people that have been with us now 2.5 years, which is pretty amazing for a small business, I feel. And I think that really shines through our company values. Community, we give back a lot of bread. So people can order a bread from us, and we donate that bread to a few different local charities and shelters. And then we also attend a lot of community events and do donations all the time. We're very transparent in our business. If you follow our newsletter, it's sometimes very raw, and there's a lot of stories about our entrepreneurial journey in those too. And energy, just being, got to bring your best and brightest each day when you're running a small business. Storytelling, I touched on this briefly already, but always in your storytelling, whether it's social media and newsletter and Facebook Live, which we do from time to time. Not my favorite thing to do, but my wife says it's extremely important. But it's being authentic in that storytelling, and really have a why for the reason for doing it. And then, yeah, those are the pillars of our business currently. Next slide, please. And that's the end.
Thank you, Ben and David, for giving us your insights and letting us know about the Small Business Development Center, and Ben, for your journey with Voyageur Sourdough. We did have a couple of questions in the chat, which I'll get at. One of them, David and Ben, either one of you could answer it. So there was a question of, do you need a EIN number to approach the Small Business Development Center? And kind of related to that, is there a point where what's kind of the first steps in creating a business and then looking for assistance with that creation of that business? Where do you start out, and where do you start for looking for assistance?
I think from my perspective, first of all, you don't need an identification number, which basically is your social security number for your business. I've had many clients that have reached out to me. They said, hey, I started an LLC and I got my EIN number. So now I need to do a business plan. I need to know what's the next step. And many times the question really is, let's just kind of put those legal situations off to the side for a second, and let's just kind of explore your idea. So I would say the sooner that we come together and meet, whether it's us, whether it's SCORE, or just to go through the process to say, why do I want to do this? What do I want to do? What do I know about what I want to do? I think that type of clarity is the journey. That's where people should go to start a business.
Yeah, I think I think it's more intuitive to know when the right time for each stage of that beginning journey. So I think it's important, before you go all in and you spend a lot of time on your business plan and all those things, is to really test your product and give it to people close to you, and try and see if you could join a farmer's market for one weekend and sell it. Just give it out to as many people you can and get some feedback, do a survey, post that before you spend a lot of time. I don't think I did the business plan until 3 or 4 months down the line, to be honest. And so, yeah, and then always seek out help. People like David and all of the rest of them around Wisconsin that can guide you in those early stages, and they will map it out for you.
And then there was a question specifically for you, Ben. What platform are you using for your digital newsletter, and how do you collect the email addresses?
Yeah, so that's done on MailChimp, so MailChimp.com. And so basically on our website, people visit that and they'll see, if it's your first time visiting the website's built on Shopify. So the first time they visit that, a pop-up will come on the screen that says, if you give your email, we'll give you a $2 coupon. And then so basically people will give their emails, and that's how organically it's grown over time. We've never spent any money on driving traffic to our website. It's all just happened organically. We spent our time, obviously, so but yeah, never done any ads. And so, yeah, people put in their email address, and that gets collected into a platform called MailChimp. And within MailChimp, you can craft your daily or weekly or monthly newsletters and add your images and your links and get it ready and send it out to however many people you have. And then over time, obviously, that number of people in there should grow.
And then one other question for you, Ben, is when you used the shared kitchen, how did you charge? How did they charge you for the proofing time for the breads?
Charge me for the price. They just charged me an hourly rate for using the kitchen. So they didn't. So when I was physically there, they didn't charge me because I would proof the bread overnight in their walk-in cooler. So the time that the bread was resting, they didn't charge me. But yeah, if I spent 6 hours a day in there, they would charge me for those 6 hours. Obviously, being church and school run, I mean, it wasn't an expensive place to rent from them. It was a great deal.
Thanks.
All right.
Then there was one question about help with projected sales and profit. How would you locate help for that? And I guess that might be a question for David.
Well, we work with clients on that perspective. Some of that is just understanding your business in general and then breaking it down to say, okay, what is it that you do? What is it that you're selling? Who are you selling it for? You get into the understanding of what's going through their head to say, okay, at the end of the day, how many people do you think are going to buy your product? You have an idea. And then we build that out from that. Now, generally, if you're looking to go to a bank for some funding need, sometimes they want to have projections. The most important part of it is, what's your gut instinct? Somehow that number got there on that paper or on that spreadsheet. Why? Now, I will tell people that when they're dealing with their bankers or some finance, you probably know more about your business model than they ever do. So speaking with confidence and understanding, I think is probably the biggest hurdle that you have. But we will help you with projections. If you're in Fond du Lac, I see that our colleagues over there at Oshkosh are wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's hard because obviously all that planning, if I look back at my business plan I first did that, for 3 years forecast, that, is any of it, did it turn out that way? And probably not. But I think it's still an important exercise to do because it will give you an idea of whether you have a viable business, regardless of what your end sales are going to be. And I think it's a challenge that we've had as a business too, is the true profitability of each product that you put out there that you make. And it's really important that you choose the model for pricing your products as early as possible and tweak it as you go on. We didn't do a great job of that at the beginning, but we didn't have many people working in the business. Now we have 20 employees. The profitability of each item and each sale is extremely important. And as you scale, that becomes more and more important. So that's really where the focus for me as a business owner is making sure that everything that we do is profitable. And then, we use QuickBooks, and that helps. There has a cash flow forecast in there, and it's just about knowing when to pay people, managing your payroll. Those are always going to be the two largest expenses for your business. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, David and Ben. With that, I'm going to ask if there are any last questions, and there's an evaluation link that's been put in the chat a couple of times. So if you wouldn't mind completing that, it'll also come out with an email following the webinar. So any last words of advice, David or Ben, or any last questions?
Yeah, I would just say good luck. And if anyone wants to ask any questions, please reach out to me.
Thanks both of you for joining us this afternoon, and thanks for the great information that you've provided.